Hello everybody, welcome back to another Atomic Productions movie review. Today we're going to take a look at Avatar 2, Way of the Water. Now, there is a dog outside my house barking, and I apologize sincerely if you can hear it throughout the duration of this video. I certainly hope that's not the case. But, time to take a look at Avatar 2, Way of the Water. I'm a couple months too late. Like I've been saying, I've just been really caught up in schoolwork and stuff like that, so I've been really late getting these movie reviews out and just my videos in general. But Avatar 2, Way of the Water was directed by James Cameron yet again. It is the sequel that took around 13 years to make. The original Avatar came out in 2009, I believe. So yeah, around 13 years to make this sequel. Was it worth it? Well, let's find out. Now, this movie stars Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, and Stephen Lang. So first and foremost, I just have to say how beautiful this movie is. Like, I have to make a point that this is probably one of the most gorgeous movies that I've ever seen. More so than the first one, in my opinion. I really don't think that you can get more visually, like, amazing than this movie. I would even go as far to say that any, like, issues that I have with the plot or anything that I feel like is missing from the story of the movie, the film makes up for visually. I love the way the planet of Pandora was expanded in this movie. It almost feels like it's an entire other planet. I mean, like, the environments are different, but things are similar enough to the point where it still feels like Pandora, which is a contradiction of my previous statement, but it's kind of hard to illustrate how I feel. But the water biome, I guess, the beach front of Pandora is like entirely different from the jungles, yet the wildlife still kind of resemble something that you would find on Pandora. Like, it all feels like one concrete planet. They just did a really good job of kind of showing how different areas of a planet would have adapted. And that's the thing that I really just have to, like, applaud the creators of this movie for, like the creature designers and all that, is that, like, they really took adaptations. Like, they put a lot of effort into making sure that these animals that we'd find in these environments look like they are adapted to these environments. It's a really kind of small thing, I feel like, but it does so much for the world building of this movie. I love seeing how far Jake Sully's family had come from the first movie. I don't really know how many years in the future that this movie jumps, but I know it's a lot because he has 2 teenage sons, an adopted daughter, and another daughter. It's probably around 15 years, if I were to guess. I don't think that the real life time span between these two movies of 13 years was accurate. I think it's more like 15, maybe even 20 years. But it was a long time in between these two movies, and I just loved seeing how Jake's family had developed. I loved seeing their relationship with the other Na'vi, and I loved seeing each of these individual characters interact with their world, of course, when they go to the water area of Pandora, and how they interact with the different Na'vi, and just, like, everything surrounding Jake's family, in my opinion, is the very best part of this movie, which, of course, it makes sense, but there's a lot to this movie. There's a lot of side plots and a lot going on. Because it's such a long movie, I feel like that specific aspect of, like, the story and the characters were really great. Of course, that does not include the character Spider, which is a human that was adopted by the Na'vi, which I will talk about later. Now, I kind of touched on this earlier, but I didn't really care for the story that much. I felt like, I'm not going to say that the length of this film was where I had problems with, because there have been 3-hour movies. I even touched on one on the channel, The Batman, that don't necessarily feel too long, or they don't feel like they drag. But this movie, I feel like, had so much going on within this 3 hours. It didn't feel long, per se, but it did feel like at certain aspects, at certain points in this movie, it felt like it dragged its feet, if that makes sense. It didn't feel long, but it definitely felt like they were just trying to fill they're trying to pad out the runtime with just things happening that didn't really feel like they had that much importance to the plot. I know this one character, one of Jake's adopted daughter, I do not remember her name, has like a bit where she like reconnects with this plant and she has a seizure or something and she goes into shock. And from what I remember, they don't really touch on that again because I feel like that's building up to the next movie. A lot of this film really felt like they were just setting things up and building to the next one, to the point where it didn't really feel like there was much. I mean, like, there was so much happening, but you didn't really get anything out of it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know why I just asked the camera if it knew what I meant. Before we get into spoiler territory, let's just say I give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I left the theater happy, but there was more that I felt like they could have done with it. And with that being said, let's jump into spoilers. I know a lot of people didn't like this, but I didn't really have that much of an issue with the Colonel character returning. I actually think that it was used pretty well, but maybe not as well as they could have. I don't know. There's something that about like the antagonists, I say plural because there's a lot of different kind of antagonists in this movie. I like I said earlier, I felt like they could have done more, even though I did like how they brought that character back and how he too is now a Na'vi. I feel like that can bring up some interesting character moments. Of course, not too much happened. I mean, they set that up in this one. I feel like they'll deliver in the next one, at least what I'm looking for. I did not really like Spider that much. I felt like his entire character was a little unnecessary. It didn't, again, I feel like I'm just beating it over the head at this point, but I felt like they were setting up for the third movie because Spider is the Colonel's son. Spider at the end ends up bringing back, well, not bringing back, but saving the Na'vi Colonel, and because he wasn't killed in the final battle with Jake, which I don't mind him not dying in the final battle with Jake, I don't think. But I mean, the ending of this movie just left so much to be desired. Because really, when I was there in the theater after 3 or something hours, just sitting there, movie ends, and I'm just thinking to myself, what really happened? Like, what did I get from this? And I mean, it sounds a lot more negative than how I actually feel about it. But it left more to be desired, which is, it felt like this entire second movie was setting up for the sequels. It didn't feel like its own entry. I mean, okay, it did. I'm gonna actually backtrack on that. It did feel like its own entry, but it didn't really give us too much. It just expanded the world, really, which is the primary thing it did. It expanded the world. It gave us more characters, more environments, more species. It gave us more conflicts, but didn't really resolve any. It added the Na'vi Marines that were a threat, but didn't really get rid of that threat either. I mean, now the Colonel is on Pandora. He's learning the ways of the Na'vi, and it opens so much for speculation for the next movies, but like, I feel like I'm just talking to myself in circles at this point, but you understand what I'm trying to say, I hope. That was my review of Avatar 2, Way of the Water. I really, I liked it. I liked it a lot. Did I like it more than the first one? I'm not quite sure. Parts of it I liked more than the first one, especially the visual aspects of it. But other parts, not so much. I feel like the first movie wraps its own story up pretty well, but still leaves room for a sequel, which I feel like every film should do. Whereas this movie, it left us with a lot of questions. It added a lot to the overall story of Avatar, but didn't really resolve as much as it probably should have. With that being said, that was my review. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm Sean from Atomic Productions. Have a good night, everybody.